historical past and today. Why would any culture of history want to be on God's list of the top 7 things he hates? Has any culture survived? This lecture will try to bring to our awareness the history of the shedding of innocent blood and what type of people are behind such shedding. God hates hands that shed innocent blood. What would cause men to shed innocent blood? Let us travel back and forth across time and see why cultures have shed innocent blood. In a sense, the idea of innocent blood is all over the news today. If you listen to the New York Times or CNN, or if you go to the public schools where the 1619 Project is taught, you might think America is and always has been a country that did not think that black lives mattered. What do African Americans themselves think? Here's a video of people being asked. What would you say is the number 1 cause of death in the African American community today? Here's what these 11 people said. Heart disease, HIV, diabetes, cancer, AIDS, and this last person mentioned gang violence. Now watch this person's face when he's given the real answer.
From what I heard, it's probably AIDS,
What if I told you the real answer was abortion?
Since 1973, legal abortion has killed more African Americans than AIDS, cancer, diabetes, heart disease, and violent crime combined. Every week, more blacks die in American abortion clinics than were killed in the entire Vietnam War. And the largest chain of abortion clinics in the United States is operated by Planned Parenthood. Why did he act so surprised? Probably because such an obvious answer has been hidden by the news, academia, Hollywood, political debates. African Americans make up 12.41% of the population, but they have 37% of the abortions. Every 4 days, more black lives are killed by legal abortions than the KKK clan killed in 150 years. Today, an African American baby is almost 5 times more likely to be aborted than a white American baby. Why would a culture think these black lives do not matter? What does the media report? Well, the media attacks pro-life candidates and pro-life organizations. The media downplays pro-life rallies. And then the media says Black Lives Matter. The media now attacks the founding of this country. The media never, and I mean never, lets you know that over half of this country's founding fathers were members of abolitionist societies. The founders thought Black Lives Matters because all lives matters. Here's a link to a short article, The Founding Fathers and Slavery. This won't be reported by the media. But unfortunately, when they won the American Revolution, 2 states' representatives would not abolish slavery and wouldn't join the Union unless they could keep what the King of England and its Parliament had forced upon the colonies. When I say forced upon the colonies, remember what we covered in the 2 Wednesday night lessons called Where Did All the Races Come From? Remember John Adams said every single jury in a court of law in his colony had always declared the black man free, never declared him a slave. So when forming the first Union of States, the Founding Fathers had a choice. Lose some of the states, or do not say anything directly against slavery. Most founders at that time thought slavery would die out in the next few years, so they compromised on the truth. That was about 1787. How did the experts' prediction turn out? Not too well. Compromise with the truth does not work. The cotton gin was invented just a few years later, 1793. Cotton made the South rich. Slaves were now worth much more. But the slave owners were not saying Black Lives mattered. They treated blacks as if Black lives did not matter. But they sure wanted their labor for almost next to nothing. Yet even with the cotton gin, the South was nowhere near as productive as the North. Slave owners were often lazy and cruel. Remember the movie night where it showed the difference in productivity on 2 sides of a border? One side was a free state, the other side was a slave state. Same thing today. See this nighttime satellite picture of the same people genetically? One group lives in the socialist communist north, and the other group lives in the south. When people's lives matter, they're valued more and they produce more. Back to Black Lives Matter in the U.S. The media claims the U.S. has always been racist and did not value black lives. Yet the United States is the only country in the history of the world that fought a war and lost 600,000 men over this issue, that black lives matter. Most Americans in the 1800s thought all lives mattered, but often the Supreme Court went against what most Americans believed. The Supreme Court followed the media of its day. Nothing new. Even before the American Revolution, the media was corrupt. Remember the committees of correspondence? Why did the founders go through all the trouble and expense of creating their own news network? They created it 10 years before the revolution. They said you couldn't trust the media. Therefore, they'd have to be the ones getting the truth to the people. Same thing today. Even today, many Americans do not know that the U.S. Supreme Court often goes against the Constitution and against the intent of legislation that is passed. Just a side note, the 14th Amendment mentions protections for citizens, but it also mentions protections for the life of persons. And the specific protections for persons was known to include babies in their mother's womb. See the links in your books. Don't believe the media when they say the states have the right to legalize abortion if Roe v. Wade is overturned. They do not. But back to the 1800s for a minute. In 1857, the Dred Scott decision, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that black lives did not matter. Black lives had no more civil rights than a horse. But the American public had already rejected such a belief. Americans in 1854 started to fight the expansion of slavery by backing a totally new party and kicked out the Slavery Party in 1860. If you want more of the best stories I've heard about slave owners in the 1800s, see the appendix in their lectureship notes and the link. They made an Academy Award-winning movie out of the villain, very wicked slave owner. But they never made a movie about the most beloved slave owner in America. He was beloved by his slaves, not his peers. His name was John McDonough. He became the largest landowner in the state of Louisiana, probably the largest landowner in the nation. He ended up owning all the land around New Orleans. He worked 18 hours a day. He wore threadbare clothes and walked everywhere just to save money. He wanted to amass as much money as he could. Why? So that when he died, he could leave it all to schools for poor people of all classes, black and white. He educated his own slaves so they would know what to do with their freedom when he gave it to them. He left $1.5 million in 1850. But this lesson is not about political parties or even the Civil War. It is about why do people treat others as if their lives do not matter? Why do they allow or endorse the shedding of innocent blood? Over 70% of Americans have always called themselves Christians. So they should know that God hates such attitudes. Do people think they can just ignore any responsibility to stand up for the unborn? Will God hold them accountable if they stay silent? Proverbs 24:11 and 12. Deliver those who are drawn toward death, and hold back those stumbling to the slaughter. If you say, surely we did not know this, does not he who weighs the hearts consider it? He who keeps your soul, does he not know it? And will he not render to each man according to his deeds? Even in the Old Testament, babies were protected and their deaths were wept over, as many of the scriptures that Noel used showed us. 2 Kings 8:12. King Hazael, a foreign king, said to Elisha, "Why is my Lord weeping?" How did he answer? "Because I know the evil that you will do to the children of Israel." What kind of evil? Look at the last part. Rip open their women with child. Amos 1:13. God's going to destroy the people of Ammon because they ripped open the women with child. Why did they do it? That they might enlarge their territory. They did it for profit. If Americans who call themselves Christians will allow such evil, why should we be surprised when they support other violations of God's Word? They support the distortions of the worship of God, the distortion of the deity of Christ, the distortion of God's plan of salvation, return of Christ, miracles, creation, and they even distort where they came from and where they're going. But back to our main point. Why do cultures shed innocent blood? Answer? Because they have been taught lies. And even more importantly, they have believed those lies. Many people do not fear being taught lies in many subjects. They've been taught that only certain subjects really matter. Today's pro-abortion movement that control our schools and media do not realize they hold such a position because they believe lies. Believing a lie often makes people hypocrites. These same pro-abortion groups often cry out racial injustice and discrimination against women in the job market. Examples. Women make up about 50% of the population, but only 13.9% of our civil engineers. Marlon, you work in a highly discriminatory occupation, but you're not as bad as mechanical engineers. They're only 6.6%. But look at even the programmers. Only 18.7% of our programmers are women. Remember what we learned just a few minutes ago. Why doesn't the media tell these same groups that are yelling discrimination that African Americans make up 12.41% of the population, but they make up 37% of the abortions? And a white baby is almost 5 times less likely to be aborted than a black baby. But here's a key question. Who educated a black woman to think it was okay to abort her child? And then made sure most of the abortion clinics were concentrated in minority neighborhoods. In 1973, Roe v. Wade was not an accident. It did not just accidentally affect black children more than white children. It was backed and pushed by racists who wanted the minority population, especially blacks, to have less children. Why didn't the media report this? Jesse Jackson did. Black Panther movement screamed about it. Politicians back there who knew what was going on, they spoke up and screamed out about it. The media didn't report on it, did they? See my Alpha 21 documentary. To quote Kennard Charis, Planned Parenthood kills as many African American people in 4 days as the Klan killed in 150 years. And you can truly say the most dangerous place for an African American to be is in the womb of their African American mother. The documentary goes on to say, if you want evidence that the eugenics movement that wanted to suppress the black births was behind the legalizing of abortion in 1973, just look at the government's own statistics. Studies from the CDC showed that in the years before abortion was legal, approximately 80% of all illegal abortions were done on white babies. One study in New York found that white women had 5 times more abortions than black women. But at the moment that abortion became legal, that began to reverse. Legalization created the ability to market abortion to the black community. And from a eugenics viewpoint, that changed everything. Planned Parenthood knew this would be the result. Before abortion had become legal in the United States, a Planned Parenthood consultant, who wrote this book right here, showing you the 6th edition of it, okay? A Planned Parenthood consultant had shown that when abortion is illegal, the abortion rate for white women is much higher than for black women, and that this completely reverses once abortion is legalized. Frederick Osborne, just a founding member of the American Eugenics Society, in 1973 he said, birth control and abortion are turning out to be the great eugenics advances of our time. According to the U.S. Census data, there were 18,871,831 black American citizens in 1960. Since Roe v. Wade legalized abortion in 1973, abortion has killed an estimated 20 million black babies, more than the entire black population of 1960. How much more political force would African Americans have if they had been taught it was wrong and illegal to kill their babies in their mother's womb? The people who really are racist helped get abortion legalized so they could put most of the abortion clinics in minority poor communities. The media does not let African Americans know what the lies they have believed have done to the innocent. If the media truly wanted black lives to matter, they'd also stand up for black lives in the womb. But this is nothing new in human history. The ancient Romans did not think the lives of slaves mattered, black, white, brown. Hitler did not think the lives of Jews mattered. One preacher found this advertisement from Germany in 1944, a classified ad, appearing in the Berlin Times. Lampshades for sale, made of slightly worn Jewish skin, more durable than cloth, easy to clean. Order yours today, shipped directly from Auschwitz. Planned Parenthood does not think the lives of babies matter, just like the ad for Jewish skin. That same article showed this particular brochure given to abortion clinics is the price they're willing to pay for body parts. This was presented in the debate of the House Resolution 350 to Congress. The price list is gruesome itself. Livers, $150. Kidneys, $150. Arms, 2 for $150. Brains, $999. Could this be true? Would anybody be so depraved? Job 6:27, as Job replied to Eliphaz, "Yea, you would cast lots upon the fatherless, and make merchandise of your friend." Again, the U.S. Supreme Court in its 1857 Dred Scott decision said that black lives did not matter. African Americans themselves in the 1700s did not think their slaves' lives mattered. They sold them to each other and traded over 12 million of them to white slave traders from England in exchange for booze and trinkets. And less than 10% of them went to North America. Only Christian cultures historically protect women and children. Men sacrifice their lives for women and children. Remember the Titanic in 1912? The third-class passengers were further below deck and had poor access to the lifeboats, but even there, 84% of the men died and only 54% of the women, and 66% of the children. But look at second class. 92% of the men in second class died, but only 14% of the women and 0 of the children. First class, 67% of the men died, but only 3% of the women and only 1 child. What about the crew? Well, 78% of the men died, only 13% of the women. Atheists hate the example of the Titanic. PoliticusUSA.com article tries to claim there was no such thing as women and children first at sea. What was their evidence? Well, Uppsala University in Stockholm studied 18 of the world's most famous maritime disasters since 1852. They reported out of 15,142 people on board of 18 ships, sailing under 8 different national flags, did not protect women and children. More women died than men, 82%, versus only 65% of the men died. That means only half as many women survived, around 18% compared to 35%. Women. Which ships would you rather be on? One from a country that goes by Christian principles, like the Titanic, or some pagan ship? When did Christians start influencing pagan cultures to protect women and children, their codes of chivalry? Here's an example from Ireland around 700 AD. In pagan Ireland, the husbands would place their wives in front of them on the field of battle, often carrying a baby in her pouch. The wife was given a 30-foot-long pole with an iron hook. If the woman hesitated to charge and fight in the heat of battle, the husband flogged her back to prod her forward. After a Christian statesman named Adamon saw such a battlefield, he denounced this brutality, and he drafted what's called the Law of Innocence. This law was enacted at the Synod of Beer in 697 AD with 91 signatories from Ireland and Britain. As Christianity pushed for this code of chivalry, country after country in Europe enacted laws protecting women and children. But nations not influenced or pressured by Christian nations did not protect their women and children. But today, in America, more than 150 female soldiers have died in Iraq and Afghanistan. Yet instead of outrage, 66% of Americans support lifting the combat ban for women, and only 26% oppose it. We should not even allow a woman to volunteer for such possible brutality. Back to slavery and Black Lives Matter in the U.S. Remember, Darwinism was used to justify slavery by claiming blacks had not evolved as far toward humanists as whites. America's top evolutionist, a communist, Marxist, atheist, Stephen Jay Gould, PhD at Harvard University, he admitted biological arguments for racism may have been common before 1850, but they increased by orders of magnitude, that means by a factor of at least 100, increased by at least 100 following the acceptance of evolutionary theory. Ignorance is deadly. Lies can be deadly. Evolution is deadly, especially to any groups of people that evolution says are not as evolved as others, whether that's Hitler in World War II for the Jews, or Stalin, or Lenin, or Mao Zedong, or even in 21st century America. With 80% of Planned Parenthood abortion facilities in minority neighborhoods, there's more deaths due to abortion in this world than all the previous wars for the last 150 years. Funding. What are the two largest killers in American society? Who receives the most government funding? Well, heart disease is number one. Cancer is number two. Who's number three? Well, in 1970, Planned Parenthood was the 17th largest fundraising health-related business in the U.S. 30 years later, they're number three, only behind the American Heart Association and the American Cancer Society. But heart disease kills about 600,000 people per year. Cancer kills about 600,000 per year. But today, abortion kills about 862,000 per year, and it is much, much worse. Why is it much worse? Heart disease and cancer usually kill people who've already had many years of life. Abortion kills before the child has even 1 year of life. Heart disease and cancer have billions spent per year trying to save people. But abortion spends billions per year trying to kill people. Is the government unintentionally involved in using abortion to commit genocide on black Americans? 30 years after Roe v. Wade, is it a coincidence that at the same time when the government population control programs that included eugenics, the same time those control programs were backing away in funding, the state and federal funding for Planned Parenthood went up by leaps and bounds. Much of these details and far, far more are in this documentary that you can see online called Ma'afa 21. Ma'afa is an African word that means genocide. I'd recommend that everyone watch it. Hitler is seen by the world as one of the most evil leaders in history. Why was he considered so evil? Because of what he did to 6 million Jews and others. Genocide. Yet nothing he did to the Jews was illegal in Germany. Long before Hitler came to power, Germany accepted the lie of evolution and considered some human beings not worthy of life. The majority of Germans didn't even know that what Hitler did to the Jews. Shortly after the war, the American military forced the Germans who lived near the death camps to visit the camps. Here's a video of the Germans visiting the camp. You can see them smiling and joking with each other as they travel to the camp. But there are no smiles or jokes when they're leaving the camps. You can see a dramatic transformation on their faces after they see the horrors of what their government did to innocent human lives. Their conscience was changed. What is a conscience? It comes from two words, con meaning self or with, and science meaning knowledge. Before they visited the death camps, their conscience was different because they didn't have true knowledge. They didn't have true science. Their previous knowledge contained lies. When their eyes replaced the lies with the knowledge that was true, their conscience changed their behavior. Lies can be very dangerous for you and for others. Genocide, when closely looked at, causes hearts to realize they've been silent when such evil has occurred on their watch. Jews' lives mattered because all lives matter. Black lives matter because all lives matter. How can we change the direction America is going? The media, entertainment, and our government have been lying more and more about abortion and devaluing of human life. Yet the percentage of Americans who are pro-life is increasing. Why? What happened in the mid-1990s? Has the news media become more pro-life? No. They're even more pro-death. Has the entertainment industry, Hollywood, TV, and music become more pro-life? No, they're even more pro-death. What about the books, the videos shown to our youth in schools? They grow up, they vote, they're getting more and more pro-life? No. Those books in the schools are even more pro-death. Have the colleges and higher education become more pro-life? No. They're much more pro-death. What about the denominations? Have they become more pro-life? No. It's even worse. The older population has died off in the last 30 years, and they were the most pro-life. So if all the major sources of information that influence Americans has become even more pro-death, then how in the world did the percentage of Americans who are pro-life increase? Truth changes hearts. Scientific progress has led to 3D and 4D ultrasounds of the baby in the womb. In 1973, the American public rarely saw the babies in the womb. When mothers today who are considering abortion see an ultrasound of their babies, the vast majority protect their baby from the abortionists. They save their child from the lies of our culture. A woman who was getting an abortion at 3 months, she relayed her conversation with the abortion clinic counselor. She asked the counselor, "What does a 3-month-old fetus look like?" Look what the answer was by the counselor. "Just a clump of cells," she answered matter-of-factly. Later, the same woman saw some pictures of fetal development. She said, "When I saw that a 3-month-old clump of cells had fingers and toes and was a tiny, perfectly formed baby, I became really hysterical. I've been lied to and misled, and I'm sure thousands of other women are being just as poorly informed and badly served." What will happen to the pro-abortion hearts when they see exactly who is inside those wombs? This 3-minute animation is medically very accurate. It just came out and will be part of the brief to be used in the upcoming Supreme Court decision about the new Mississippi abortion law. Let's view it.
This is Olivia. Though she has yet to greet the outside world, she has already completed an amazing journey. This is the moment that life begins. A new human being has come into existence. At fertilization, her gender, ethnicity, hair color, eye color, and countless traits are already determined. She begins to implant in the uterus about 1 week after fertilization. Her cells organize into what we call an embryo. At 3 weeks and 1 day, just 22 days after fertilization, Olivia's heartbeat can be detected. The buds of her arms and legs appear by 4 weeks. She begins to move between 5 and 6 weeks with both spontaneous and reflexive movements. At 6 weeks from fertilization, her brain activity can be recorded and bone formation begins. She can bring her hands together at 7.5 weeks, and separate fingers and toes emerge. She can also begin to hiccup. At the beginning of the 9th week, Olivia will have grown from a single cell into nearly 1 billion cells, and she is now called a fetus. She will suck her thumb and swallow, grasp an object, touch her face, sigh and stretch. At 11 weeks, she is playing in the womb, moving her body and exploring her environment. Her taste bud cells have matured by week 12 but are still scattered throughout her mouth. Her mother will first sense Olivia's movements between 14 and 18 weeks, an event called quickening. Beginning at 18 weeks, ultrasounds show speaking movements in her voice box. Around 20 weeks, with a lot of help, babies have survived outside the womb. At 27 weeks, her eyes are responding to light. She can recognize her parents' voices and will even recognize lullabies and stories. Olivia has gone on an amazing journey during these last 9 months. She will soon signal to her mother that it is time for delivery and greet the outside world.
God hates the shedding of innocent blood. If you want to see how to change pro-abortion hearts in just a few minutes, see this video. It's called 180 Degrees. While his message at the end about salvation is not what the Bible says, he does change hearts 180 degrees in just a few minutes on the issue of abortion. Over 1 million DVDs of this documentary have been given out, and it was shown on television in over 180 countries. Abortion is evil. Why would any society tolerate such evil? Because they did not know? Because they were lied to? Because they benefited from not knowing? Because they gave up? After all, the state was in control. Hitler and the German law system said Jews were life devoid of value. Where did that come from? It didn't come from Hitler. It came decades before by a doctor of jurisprudence who was also a doctor of medicine. And if it hadn't been for the book he wrote, the German euthanasia program might not have begun. Over 70% of Americans claim some allegiance to Jesus Christ. They call themselves Christians. Americans say that what happened to the Jews in Germany could never happen to humans in America. Why? Because we have a Constitution and a Declaration of Independence that declares we must protect a human's life. America's been lied to about upward evolution. Then the lie of upward evolution was used to justify genocide, whether Hitler and the Jews or blacks in America. Now the baby is just not evolved enough. Planned Parenthood was originally called American Birth Control League because they wanted to control the birth of black babies. Planned Parenthood was funded and used by the elite eugenics people to practice black genocide in America. Then a few influential Americans knew that legalizing abortion would greatly increase the number of black babies that would be killed. Then the phrase population control got such a bad reputation when they found out genocide was being done under the name of population control. Again, is it just a coincidence that the exact time when the government greatly decreased funding for population control methods, that was the same time the government greatly increased the funding for Planned Parenthood? Remember, even today, 80% of Planned Parenthood clinics are in minority neighborhoods. The United States has stayed silent because of the lies. Americans have stayed silent because the media hides the truth. Because politicians lie or compromise on the truth. Because schools repeat lies. Hollywood entertains us with their lies. And again, lies kill people. Lies stop people from evaluating the data for themselves. Lies get people to be silent. Lies cause attacks against the truth. Lies get people to take the wrong actions. Matthew 15:14. If the blind leads the blind, both will fall into a ditch. Lies cause people to wind up in hell. For more information on this issue of shedding innocent blood, see the links in the appendix. To clear up the lies on baptism, see whitebaptism.org. To clear up the lies taught to children about upward evolution and dinosaurs, see truthaboutdinosaurs.org. To clear up some of the lies taught about the Bible, see miraculousbible.org. How can you prove the Bible has a miraculous source? To clear up lies on the shedding of innocent blood, see better-news.org and press the link for details on this lesson. If we can help you clear up the lies on any subjects that distract you from God's purpose for your life, please let us know. Let us help you clear out the lies so you can learn to hate what God hates and love what God loves, and fight where God wants you to fight. What image could I possibly put in front of you that really explains hate and love? God the Father and God the Son hate sin so much that this is what it took for the love of God to save us from the lies and sins that surround us. Remember, God hates the hands that shed innocent blood. There's baby Jesus and there's baby John, safely inside Mary and Elizabeth's wombs. Again, Proverbs 24:11 and 12. Deliver those who are drawn toward death, and hold back those stumbling to the slaughter. If you say, surely we did not know this, does not he who weighs the hearts consider it? He who keeps your soul, does he not know it? And will he not render to each man according to his deeds? God hates hands that shed innocent blood.